Welcome back to the penultimate episode of Hidden Roots. In this episode, a scrap of paper that I nearly threw away turns out to be the key to tracking down my Ghanaian family. And I receive an unexpected email which might finally lead me to answers I've been looking for from the start.
One of the things I've most wanted to do since the beginning of this whole thing is to find my Ghanaian family. Dad was part of a huge family. He was one of 13 brothers and sisters. He had over 100 cousins, and at the same time, he just didn't talk about them. So I knew they existed, but I didn't know what they looked like. I didn't know their names. I didn't know what they'd done with their lives. And I guess I've always felt a little bit disconnected from my Ghanaian side. And that was because Dad just didn't talk about it. So I never knew much about that side of myself. And for me, finding them was a way of reconnecting with something that I had lost as a kid, but I only had a really small amount of information to go on to find them. Dad had a load of photos, but no names and no addresses. So I had to go off the little bit of information that I did have, which included this little scrap of paper in the bottom of a box of stuff. And it was the scrap of an envelope. And on the back of the envelope, it had a return to sender address. And it had the name Dr. J.W. Oteng from Kapong in Ghana. And through a bit of Googling, I was able to find that that was Dr. John Oteng, who had been a research assistant in Kapong and then had gone to the University of Ghana and was also listed as a director on a cocoa research board. So I emailed all those guys trying to get hold of Dr. John Oteng, but never heard back from any of them. And after several emails, I realised I probably wasn't going to get any further with that. Just by chance, I was Googling the family name Oteng and the town that my dad was born in. And on the 8th or 9th page of Google, I found an article by this guy called Professor Alfred Oteng Yeboah, who was writing an article about some Chinese takeover deal in Ghana. But he also mentioned that he was from the town of Chebi, and he had an email address at the bottom. So I got in contact with him and told him what I was doing and that I was looking for my family, and wondered if maybe we were related or he might have known my dad or some of the family back in the day. He got back to me pretty quickly and said he'd love to help, but he just didn't recognize the name. But I was able to send him all the information that I did have, just in case something might have jogged his memory. And I mentioned in the email that I had the details of this guy, Dr. John Oteng from Kapong.
It turned out, just by chance, that the professor did recognise the name J.W. Oteng. John Oteng. They had known each other decades ago, but had lost contact. We kept in touch over the next week, but Alfred struggled to find him based on the details I'd given. He didn't want to give up, but he didn't know where to look next. Then I remembered that when I'd been looking online, I'd seen that John had worked for the Cocoa Research Institute of Ghana. When I told Alfred this, he knew exactly how to get hold of John and messaged him to let him know that a guy named Joe from the UK had been looking for him for years, thought they might be related, and wanted to get in touch. Things moved quickly from there. John messaged one of his younger brothers based in the UK called Edward, who sent me an email the next day. And it turned out that both Edward and Dr. John were my cousins. I was so thankful to Alfred for finding my cousin John. But the fact that I found Alfred at all was a whole lot crazier than I first realised. To start with, it turns out that although he has the second name Oteng, he isn't directly related to my family. And secondly, the town of Chebi that he was talking about in his article, the reason I got in touch with him in the first place, is a completely different Chebi to the one Dad grew up in. So me finding this article by a man who shared our second name but wasn't related, and who was talking about a town called Chebi but not the one my dad came from, was just blind luck. And by complete and utter chance, he knew my cousin, Dr. John Oteng. It's the equivalent of me getting a list of everyone living in Ghana, choosing a name at random, asking them if they happen to know someone I'm looking for, and them saying, yes.
I've had a reply from Edward Oteng. Oh my god. Okay. Dear Joe, I have been forwarded an email you sent to Professor Alfred Oteng by Dr. John W. Oteng, who is my brother, regarding your search for relatives. Indeed, Mr. Pete Oteng is my uncle, and therefore you are my cousin. My number is blah 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 blah. Please do get in touch to talk further. Regards, Edward Oteng. Okay, amazing. That's him. I found him. Oh god. Okay, this is like.
So you found your cousin.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. Amazing. This was wild because I'd been looking for so long and not getting anywhere, and in the space of 24 hours through this guy Alfred, I'd managed to get in touch with the Dr. John Oteng that I'd been searching for the past 6 months, and then to speak to my actual cousin Edward, who lives in Peckham, which is insane because I lived in Brixton, which is like a 20-minute bus ride from Peckham, and we never knew that each other existed. But it was so good to finally get in contact with a member of the family, and we arranged to meet up the next week. You know what? I feel really good. I'm so excited to have found someone from the family finally, and really relieved. Like it was getting to a point where, I mean, I've been looking for so long and not finding anyone and not really getting anywhere. I was starting to lose hope a little bit, I think. I mean, whatever happened, I was always going to go to Ghana because I've wanted to go for so long. But I was starting to think maybe I was going to have to go out there and I wouldn't actually be going to meet family. I'd just be going to have the experience and maybe see what I could find out while I was out there. But this kind of changes everything, and it's like got a billion questions, and yeah, like he might have some answers, he might not, but if he doesn't know, then for sure I think he's gonna know someone that does. I'm sure there'll be some more skeletons in the closet as far as Dad's life goes. There's already been that's the one thing that has been pretty consistent in sort of getting into this whole thing, is that there was like a lot more to my dad than I thought. So it'll be interesting to see what the next revelation is.
Thanks for watching, guys. The last episode in the series is out in 2 weeks, so if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the conclusion.